like this man in what he's saying, but I see it in a far more simplified format, and that is everybody wants to play football. Everybody likes football.
Yeah.
If God is the ball, it needs two teams to play, and at the top of that league is the two biggest religions, the two biggest football teams. And so we want all of our children to be able to come and watch football. And in that, there can't be too much animosity or aggression in the stands. Yes. So the way I see it in a very poetic way. I write poetry, and I write exactly about what this man's talking about. But I write about it in a kind of a very in the moment, in the present.
Yeah.
And to do it as a life operation, as opposed to let's teach other people how to do it. If you just do it, if you just do it, if you are your religion, and not the extreme of that religion, then we can all live as one. And in that, we can all join hands, and we can all be silent for a moment collectively, and be one. And it's about the moment on from that, as opposed to all of the hundreds of years, thousands of years beforehand. And that's my interpretation of Islam, Christianity, and many other different faiths.
So would you consider yourself to follow a particular tradition, or would you consider yourself
there are elements of every single religion which I adapt into my way of life. And to understand and to interact is definitely the fundamental basis, and that's to always have an open ear. And to be considerate and to listen in peace. I go back to things that I've been taught about conversations that men had in the wilderness on mats under the stars. For them, it was very simple. Tea, warmth, conversation, and love and understanding. And for me, it can be very simplified. With those elements.
Absolutely.
And looks can be deceiving with people. And I think that when people see me, when Muslims see me, they look straight away and they question, how do I know?
The Fatiha,
So they don't understand how I know that. But when I walked into the Catholic Church, nobody could understand how I knew how to pray as a Catholic. But the same in the Buddhist, those take what you need and leave what you want. And manifestations which came 5 years ago, all and came together in one thing, and that is harden not your hearts and open your ears.
And it's very interesting you say this, because a lot of people don't mention this about Islam. Some non-Muslims don't even know this, that Islam doesn't make a claim to be a new religion. At its fundamental essence, the message that is, which is La ilaha illallah, that there is no deity worthy of worship except God alone. Islam tells us that it's been the same message throughout history. All of the messengers came, and we also believe in the messengers mentioned in the previous scriptures and so on. They came to guide people back to the worship of the one true God, the Creator, basically.
They're one true
God. Meaning
that word. So let's imagine the center of the earth. And all different tribes came to the center of the earth. And they all had different languages. And they all had different ideas. Different color hair, etc., etc. And they all met in the middle. And they're all fighting to be understood. But taking it back to that idea of what I've just said of how I work myself, which is very similar to this gentleman's religion. It's a kind of a unanimous linking of arms. We don't have to become. We already are.
But I think the subtlety here that we need to appreciate, and I believe most people don't know, is that when you say Islam is a religion and you give it that term only, then you see it as one of many other religions. So it's a way of life. It's a deen in Arabic, right? And like we said, Islam means submission to the will of God. A Muslim is someone who submits to God. So by meaning and its message, Islam is universal, it's for everyone. So it sort of encapsulates what you're saying. But what we believe is that God has sent down a final revelation for the whole of humanity, not for a certain group of people in a desert or somewhere else in the world, but for the whole of humanity till the Day of Judgment. Right? So it encapsulates what you're saying, but under Islam, now when we say Islam, again, I wanted people to think of it not as in a religion, but the religion which was sent throughout history. So it's universal, right? So essentially what you're saying, I would agree with a lot of what you're saying, which is that, for example, in the Quran it says, La ikraha fid din. There is no compulsion in religion. Everyone has a mind, God has given everyone a free will to choose. Also, the message, the essence, which is worship one God alone, is something which is known to human hearts already. We already recognize that there has to be a cause, there has to be a creator, there is something there, which is beyond the physical. So the essence of Islam is already there. So when you see it like that, and you understand that Islam is universal and it's calling for everyone, it's a calling for everyone, I see it as a way of life that everyone can adopt, if understood properly.
I mean, I completely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think that when people come to a point in their life where they're ready to accept a format of progressive conditioning, when they're ready to open up their souls and say, I'm here.
Yeah.
I believe that however that person takes it should be guided by his brothers and sisters around him.
Yes.
And ushered along with other people.
Yeah.
I don't see ever. My dad spent 5 years in Jeddah and Medina.
Wow.
He did his Umrah.
Have you been?
No, I haven't.
No.
But what I do where I'm from in Bath is when I came to faith some 5.5 years now. It was at the birth of my twins. A little boy, a little girl. Very traumatic, and I relinquished all of my kind of worldly goods, go give everything away.
Wow.
And I stood there and I had the Quran in one hand, the Bible in the other.
Yeah.
And I couldn't read it, but I understood it in my heart both.
Yeah.
And in that, I decided to take what I knew, what I'd seen from my father, because we all learn from our fathers, God willing.
Yes.
And I decided to walk forward with an open heart.
Yeah.
And no religion conditioned my way of thinking.
Yeah.
It was a decision where I had one, and I decided that I was going to walk forward with both.
Yeah.
And in my day, in my walking day, I bring Christians and Muslims together in moderate worship. In Bath, where I live, I've helped create a huge 7.5-ton statue of Mother Mary. Now the interesting thing about that is it's the biggest stone to ever be laid in the World Heritage City of Bath. It's massive.
Yeah.
And as soon as we unveiled it, we had some Muslim university students.
Yes.
They came and parked their cars in a church car park. And I said, hello, salam alaikum. Alaikum salam.
Yeah.
And we spoke. And they said, we see Mother Mary, we understand this.
Yeah.
And I said, well, can I pray for you? Can I pray for you to go forward and excel in your own faith? And for you to tell people about this garden, which is open for everybody. And in that, there was 11 university students who realised it was okay to be able to come and sit in a space which was deemed to be inaccessible. Yeah. But they parked their cars. Yeah. So what we're doing is we're breaking down walls and
absolutely
conventional divides.
And it's very interesting because, for example, in the Quran, there are passages where the Quran refers to the people of the book, and there's a lot of respect that's there as well. For example, where God says, Ya Ahl al-Kitab, all people of the book, there's an honor behind this, the way it's said in Arabic. Come to a common word between us and you. Now, the only distinction I will make here is that we're all for, coming together and discussing in a friendly, compassionate way. This is why I don't like much of the discussions that take place in Speaker's Corner. Very aggressive. It's almost like you're trying to force down things down people's throats. But there is a balance that needs to be attained, which is in the aim for unity and coming together, we shouldn't lose the truth. Right? So hence, and this is the balance that Islam maintains, is that it calls people to reason and to think. And for example, it acknowledges Jesus is one of the greatest messengers, and it acknowledges he came with the same message, which is to worship God alone. But what happened was, over time, people started to worship the messenger, not follow the message itself, which was the worship of God, the Creator. Now, Islam clarifies this once more. It says, look, every single human being is created by God. God loves His creation. He's providing even for the atheist. The atheist is breathing and drinking and having fun and enjoying life, right? But He created us to worship Him alone, to know Him alone. And it makes sense, even rationally, if you think about it. As intelligent human beings, we realize that we have an affinity to worship and submit and to follow. And if we understand this about ourselves, doesn't it make sense to worship the Creator and not created things, right? Because
I think that Creator comes alive in ourselves when we love ourselves.
Yes.
And I think that if you can put your hand on one stranger in your life and assist that person into loving himself or herself, then in that, you've done your work in this life. If you're good at it and you can help everybody emerge in their own faith with the same oscillation, then I believe you're doing God's work. I say God because I mean God. Your football show, who do you support? Football?
I don't watch football.
You don't watch football?
No, I don't follow football.
Do you watch football? You do. Who do you support? Who do you support? Football? Southend. Okay. I've never been a football supporter, but I've been the captain of many rugby teams.
Right.
I was the captain of England 21.
Well, I can tell you're built like a rugby player as well.
So I've led people, but I've led people to defeat. I've led people to victory. But in that, they all have their own pace.
Yes.
Just because they put on a shirt, they didn't want to do the same as me. And when you've led as a captain, when you've been a leader, and when you've had the opportunity to incite one team or one religion or another, I had the opportunity. And believe me, I could have converted so many people to Islam in Bath, because they would have looked and thought he was leading his life really bad, and now he's not. But they would have known if I was Allah or Jesus, because my actions would have been the same. And that is walking with an open heart. Our conversation could go on forever, because what we're doing is passive.
There's a lot of similar. But I think if we just slightly focus on where we may differ, and the only reason I want to do this not in the form of let's disagree for the sake of disagreeing and having an argument, just for the sake of, because normally you really get to know each other is when you understand and appreciate each other's differences, right? There's a lot of similarities between what we're saying, but the difference in what we're saying is, what I'm saying is that universal way of life that everyone should follow is Islam when understood properly. But you're saying that everyone should, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying that everyone should follow their own chosen way of life as long as they're following it and worshipping God through it. Is that what you're saying?
I would go take that one step further and say that worship light and not dark.
So be good, do
That's
good.
It. It is very simple. Everybody has a conscious decision. They know which is right and which is wrong. And in that, you can't go wrong. It even sounds like poetry.
Well, you're a poet anyway, so I expect that. But can I ask you quickly regarding your personal beliefs when it comes to God, the Creator? What do you believe about God yourself?
I believe very similar to what I've just read with this gentleman, and that is he comes to everybody who is present in their life, in their soul, and when that person is ready to open themselves, God will show Himself to that individual in the most articulate fashion for that person to be able to articulate. And in that is acceptance, and in that is to understand that we don't all like the same food. You know? So again, your question to me, it comes back in a very unanimous kind of it's like a singing bowl. You touch this, it's going to go all the way around. And that's because it is unity, it is acceptance, and I have a very, 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 very good reason to not lean towards Islam, but I also have a very good reason to not lean towards Christianity. But that's only because of the world stage of what has been portrayed. And for me, I'll make my own decision, because I accept moderates, I accept extremists, and I understand where they are. But that gives me a really good point of reference to be able to, you know.
But I'm saying if we put aside our observations of certain individuals claiming to follow certain ways of life, Muslims claiming to be Muslims, Christians claiming to be Christian, X, Y, Z, when it comes to your personal understanding of the creed, and I respect that, I really appreciate the fact that you're saying that when someone is ready, and this is a very powerful point, when someone is ready to humble themselves and recognize they have a creator above them, then God reveals himself through his signs, and he shows signs to different people in different ways, depending on their nature and their personality, right? And that's a profound point, and I would acknowledge that, and I say this is also, part of Islam, because God tells us he shows his signs to people. Everyone sees different signs, right? But when it comes to the nature of God, who is it the one that we're turning to? Who is the one that we're willing to now accept?
Who is the one? That one is one special person for you, and one special person for him, and him and him in his own contrast. And that is as far as the debate can go, unless people start trying to school and educate somebody else who may not be in that place of birth.
Sure, but one thing, don't you think that there has to be some sort of a understanding of the Creator, which people now is the one that's turning to?
And that is called realizing that you have a soul. And when you realize you have a soul, you realize that you're not in control. And that's what happens. When you identify that you are not in control, that is when it is downloaded to you.
Okay, so let me phrase it a different way, I guess. What I'm saying is, so say there is a person and they want to start to become godly. They want to start to practice, they humble themselves, they realize that there's a creator, but they say that this creator, for example, is a man who walked the face of this earth, and he is the one I worship. What would you think of that belief itself?
What I would say on a scientific level, because we have to accommodate for all intellects on this, and that is, when you die, what does your soul weigh? What does your body weigh when your soul leaves? It is proven that it weighs something. Yeah. So without that drop of electricity, that spirit, what are you? You're an agricultural cow. Without your spirit. But when your spirit becomes opened, when you open yourself to the will of God, wherever you may be in the world, and you make yourself present, then you become ignited. But you're not born until you open yourself to those possibilities, wherever you are in the country or in the world. Now, when I was in, for example, I was in Portugal. A lot of Muslims around me, and they couldn't believe this. Monolito, say it again. Say it again. He can say it better than me. He can say it quicker and better than me. But what does it mean, Monolito? And I explained.
That's you're referring to Surah Fatiha, right?
What it means to me. What it means to me. Not what is written, but what it means to me. And what it meant to me, to these Muslim guys who I was with in Portugal, was a moderate understanding of Islam. And when I've explained to Christians, to Catholics, who have said, how can you say that? I've said exactly the same. So what we're saying is it is very similar in different languages, in a hypnotic way of prayer, very similar to the Rosary. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee, and you repeat it. But what it does is it sends the vibration of the body into a relaxed state where you can receive the kindness which is manifested from many other people around you. And in that, you feel love.
No, I would agree with that, bro. So I completely agree with what you're saying, and you're making some very profound, deep, poetic points, and it's beautiful to hear it in this way, put it in this way. But what I'm getting at is, if we go to the foundations, essentially, like, yes, we're created to worship, we acknowledge this.
We can't get to the foundations.
No, okay, so
because we can't get to the foundations of any God.
Okay, so let me
because it is infinite to the individual who opens their heart, which the heart is the muscle which can be ripped. There is no amount of pain that the heart cannot take. Through my own experiences in life, I used to be into bodybuilding. My muscles could grow so much, then I needed steroids. I didn't want to take steroids. But when somebody started talking to me about opening your heart to all different religions, all different faiths, but being grounded in this life, through what window was I looking at? It was a window like that. At first, I didn't know if it was in a mosque or it was in a church, but I was looking out. I wasn't looking in. And I think so many people now are in a position where they're too scared to look out because you'd be deemed as being an extremist. And instead, people aren't talking. They're not talking civilly like we are. I would consider you a very polite man and someone who I could sit and talk and share with. And this is us breaking food, manna.
Absolutely.
And in the desert amongst the wild animals. This is us. This is how it should be done. And it's an acceptance and not a contradiction. Because I run down there, I'm 20 stone. You're going to run faster than me. But I'm going to lift, and you're not going to lift as much as me. We're all different animals in that sense. So where I'm at with it, and then when you say the foundation, if we want to drill down onto the foundation, I would say to you, brother, in the nicest possible way, open your heart more, because it is infinite.
No, but what I think I'm not getting across what I'm trying to ask is, what I'm trying to say is, do you believe in the Quran as a revelation from God?
I believe elements of the Quran.
Okay, so let's go with that first for now. When God says, "Qul huwa Allahu ahad," Surah Ikhlas, one of the most famously recited